Welcome back to Mission Entrepreneurship. Today we have David Wagner with us, who is owner of a motel in Hot Springs, North Carolina, which, if y'all don't know, Hot Springs, North Carolina was one of the towns on the French Broad River that got pretty much wiped out by Hurricane Helene. I've spent some time working with David. We were working on, I worked on your motel a little bit, and I've just gotten to know him, and I'm so excited to just hear this story and share it with all of my audience.
Every great business begins with a bold idea. Welcome to Mission Entrepreneurship, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of extraordinary entrepreneurs who've defied the odds. Discover the relentless spirit and creative minds of those who dared to innovate and take risks. Together, we'll reveal the grit and determination it takes to achieve the unthinkable mission of entrepreneurship. If you choose to accept it.
All right. So, David, where did everything start for you? Well, first introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is David Wagner, and I'm the owner of the Spring Creek Hotel, soon to be Scout Hotel, and the Whiskey Girl Event Center and Mercantile in Hot Springs, North Carolina. A little small town outside of Asheville with the Appalachian Trail going right through the center of town, and the French Broad River, one of the third oldest rivers in the world. And so this town and this place and this hotel are very special to me. My family goes back in Hot Springs, probably great grandparents, and this hotel being in my family since probably around the 50s. Although my grandfather would have been here, I was raised in South Florida. And there was a bit of an estrangement with some family here. And so it was in the mid to late 80s that my mom reunited with her family here, and I started coming up here. And we would spend all of our summers, our holidays here, our family vacations. My grandfather had passed, but I became really close with my great aunts and uncles here, his brothers and sisters, and they became like my grandparents. So I had a lot of memories here as a kid, and I was really obsessed with the place. I just felt like every time I arrived in this town, there was just like a sense of peace and excitement about life that was very different than growing up where I did. And so this was always like going back home for me. So when I went to college, I went to and studied music out in Los Angeles. When I would go back for holidays, it would be coming here because this was like going back home. And I had memories at this hotel. My cousin was running it at the time, and he ran like a pub out of what is now the Whiskey Girl, and there is a rafting company. And the hotel was mostly for hikers coming through on the Appalachian Trail or for river rafting guides that were working in the area. And we would go on awesome adventures, whitewater trips and tubing down the river and go on hikes. And our family reunions were always like we would camp at this really awesome place here called Rocky Bluff. And after I went on this journey, to Los Angeles, I just always was like, I'm going to end up getting a place there. And in the time, it's hard to imagine. And you're like, well, I can't like live in a little tiny town, but I'll do like part-time there, Eventually I moved to Austin, Texas, so I would be closer to here. And I got a little place and started spending my summers here. But then an opportunity came up 2 years ago, actually almost 3 years ago now, that my cousin, when he passed away tragically, and it was unexpected. And so it, in all the turmoil, got sold out of the family. So for a time, it was out of the family, and I had the opportunity to buy it back in. So I thought I just have to do this, and I did. I moved here full time, and kind of started this journey of running this little hotel, and trying to build back its reputation and its feeling. A lot of people like the restaurant because the Whiskey Girl was like a restaurant, and it went through like 4 restaurants in 5 years. People would say that it was cursed because my cousin was no longer running it. And so they were said, you're going to break the curse because you're starting it. And yeah, and so basically through all that, I was kind of like living out this childhood dream to be here and to be a part of this community. And it was unexpectedly halted recently by this devastating flood.
Yeah. So just to let the audience know as well, too, Hot Springs for me, I first came and visited it, I think in 2017. There's something about this place. Like there's just something about that town where the same thing happens where I'm like I keep coming back. You always come back. And I just randomly, I remember one time I was randomly just driving, was on a business trip in South Carolina. And I was like, you know what? I want to spend the New Year's in Hot Springs. I scavenged a bunch of hiking stuff and went and camped up on the Appalachian Trail. That was coming into 2019 to 2020, New Year's Eve. And the people are just amazing. And so we ended up, me and Carly ended up checking in on people that we know, and found out that Hot Springs happens to be one of the towns that's very, very dear to me, that got hit hard. And then when we came there and we started working and started meeting everybody and just really realizing just how real Hot Springs is, just how beautiful the community, the town, like there's one thing that you cannot deny is the people. I have never seen more gracious people in my life. And
Yeah, it's funny you say that about like just getting sucked in here, because we call it the Hot Springs Vortex, and it's long standing been called that. It's because the community is, there's the old school, people like my family, but then there's also just, since like the 80s, my cousin started like kind of pushing the idea of it as a outdoor adventure place, which is why he started the rafting company and all that. But like the types of people would be people coming here to explore the nature, and they would kind of just get sucked in and stay and just ended up here forever, and basically the community is kind of made up of that.
Yeah.
And so everybody that's here, I think, is very like grateful that they found the place, and so they all kind of, I think, live in that space. And that's why everybody's so friendly and gracious.
Yeah. So it's really, really beautiful that you got it back into the family. And, but then, 2-3 years later, the flood happens. So what I want to do is I would like you to, as detailed as you're comfortable being detailed, explain what that whole experience was like, because as we discovered, people outside of dealing with it have no idea. They have no clue. They weren't publishing this stuff. They weren't telling people. So if you could, yeah, in whatever details that you're comfortable with, I don't want to push you too hard, but whatever you're comfortable with, go ahead and tell us your story, because that's what I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, I don't mind at all sharing it. I think it's important that people know what happened. And, it's also kind of, I think part of it's to understand like the emotion behind it, is to understand like what it took to get to where it was like in 2 years. Like we had, I had taken on this business, and I had to start from scratch. I had to figure out how to like, get bookings, how to list it, where to put it, had how to get the room set up in a way that it could work, how to turn a restaurant building into something that could make, a living. And it took 2 years. Like basically I had just gotten to the point where it was making sense again financially. I was, and all through that, fixing things myself. The whole entire operation was run by 3 people, me and a mother and her daughter. And we did everything, the entire thing ourselves. Because, I had to kind of get it to a place where it made sense. So I feel like I was just getting there, when this happened. And, this town really is no, like stranger to flooding. It's, we're on waterways. It's kind of expected, but in the past, it was nothing like this. Like we would have, flooding that would kind of come up. Maybe some water would get into the rooms, but there was no muck. There was no, you just dry it out, and start over again. No flooding even in the time that I owned it either. But this time was different. We didn't see it coming. I don't think that anybody really realized it, and we weren't properly notified in a way that would help us really understand like what was potentially going to happen. I remember watching there's like a water gauge on the river that you can watch in real time online, and just watching it and what it was expected to get to was as high as there was the biggest flood was in, I think it was 1910. And so it was saying that it was possible to get to that, but I still just, couldn't imagine it getting, any higher. And if it did, I just thought basically the water would come up, there would be water in the buildings, and then it would go back out again. But what, actually happened was much different. So the night before the flood, I was watching the gauge. I stayed up until midnight, and I also live in a camper on some property on the river. So I was like, I got to decide whether I can move this camper or whether I need to leave. I set an alarm for 5 a.m. to check the water level when I got up, and I did. I went outside, turned on the lights on my truck so I could see. And about like halfway between me and the river, the water had already gotten. So I said, well, I better get out of here. So I collected some things from my place. It was so fast. I just grabbed like my dog's ashes. A friend of mine passed away a few years ago. I grabbed her ashes, and I took some clean clothes that I had in a bag, and I just left. And when I was even leaving my place, I have to kind of go around this road that skirts the side of a creek, and it had already filled up with water. It was probably a foot or two of water that I drove through. Still, even then, I thought, it's not going to be like that crazy. So I left. I came into town. I had 5 guests in the hotel, and I went to each of them, and I knocked on the door. It was 6 a.m. by that time, and I said, "You guys, it might kind of come up out of this creek that's behind the hotel. And so if it does, you should come to the restaurant. I think we'll be okay there. It's a little bit higher up. And if not, like worst case scenario, we can go upstairs above the restaurant." But I remembered that there was in 1977, a trailer had gotten like dislodged and pushed up against the bridge in town. And the water pushed up around that, and it inundated the bridge. And so I was like, I had a thought, and I was like, you guys, here's the thing. Like, I still don't think it's going to be like a big deal, but if that bridge does get inundated, you'd be stuck here because it'd be kind of on an island, and we'd have to stay there until it crests. and that could take a day. So luckily they all listened and left and went to the school where people were staging at like higher ground. And I kind of decided I might just stick it out at the restaurant. But something inside of me told me, David, just cross that bridge. That way you're not stuck. You got, you can always just come back. So I crossed the bridge around, I think it was like 9 a.m. And it was literally 20 minutes afterwards that water just came rushing over the top of the bridge. So I watched that from the other side of the bridge. Still, even then, I thought, okay, it's inundated the bridge because a bunch of wood has like gathered at the bridge. And I just thought it would kind of go around the bridge, go down our road along like on one side of the hotel and back out again. But I don't remember the exact time of it, but by later that day, the water had gotten so big coming down that creek that it just filled up all the way down behind all of the businesses. And it just pushed through the back sides of them and out the front sides of them, and then through the front side of mine and out the back side of it. And, watch that happen from the other side. Seeing like the back of my hotel, just like a full river running through the hotel, taking everything with it. I had a separate building that was like a laundry room with 6 washers and dryers. The whole building was picked up, moved 200 feet, and then just smashed to smithereens. The restaurant's foundation, the driveway had gotten dug out by the water probably 15 feet, and the entire foundation wall just fell into that hole off the building. And when the water finally crested enough for us to get into town again, it was like zombies just walking around looking at the devastation. I mean, there was holes in the ground probably 15 foot wide and 15 feet deep, just massive sinkholes. The whole road was broken up like a bag of potato chips. It just was so big. I was in such a daze because I couldn't even imagine what it would take to rebuild an entire town. How do you even do that? And somehow it was probably within a day, all our town got together. We had a town meeting, and we started having them daily. But we got together and just said, let's go clean it up. And we had people from around the area bringing in their tractors, whatever equipment they had, and we started mucking out buildings. And we would stop each other, hug, cry, work for a while, cry again, work for a while. It was so overwhelming. I didn't even know that I could do it, but the volunteers were what made it happen, because they would come in there were certain people that would come in with just a great amount of knowledge and positivity, and they would just say, let's do this. And they started cutting wires and shoring up buildings, and you just be like, okay, let's do it. Okay, I'll do it. And you just start doing it. And little by little, there was times where I was just like, I'm going to just give up. I'll just return this place, but then like people just kept going, and we kept going and kept going. And then you're just like, well, I guess I'll just keep going. And somehow, we started rebuilding. We have a footer ready to pour on the restaurant next week. We'll start building that foundation wall back. We'll start redoing the concrete floors in it. Folks like you came and helped me demo all the hotel rooms, and now we're going to start rebuilding them back, including an entire concrete block wall that was completely blown out of the hotel.
Let me tell you, after experiencing hot springs and seeing what the devastation, I'm going to build everything out of brick. I learned that brick held up the best.
Yeah, and stone, believe it or not.
Yeah, but the hole this hole, like you could see where the water hit the bridge, flew up, came down next to your restaurant and next to the tavern, and came down, dug a hole, and then shot out and went through the brick building. Just the brick stone, it just threw it. And I want my audience to really understand what we're talking about here. The amount of force and pressure that it would take to be able to do that. And then you got that older building where the foundation's completely cracked. The one I was working on, I was just looking at the water through the entire cracked foundation coming apart. It's unreal. And we got there 3.5 weeks after it happened. So the cleanup, most of the cleanup was all done. It was just, work. I remember I walked up and I was like, hey, I'm skilled labor. Show me the tools and tell me what you need. And, I just, to put into real freaking context here, I have never seen flood damage like this in my entire life, like ever on the news or anything. Like it was insane. But yeah, I just wanted to really hone that in there for the audience. Like it was freaking insane.
Yeah, you really can't even imagine it. And when you're there, I think about like flooding in Florida or something where, the water came in and got out and there's a water line, this was just complete demolition, like as if a tornado hit it, I always say that block wall in the hotel was like the Kool-Aid man came and blew through it,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And it's just it's unimaginable. You just couldn't even believe it was possible. So yeah, and that was 3 weeks after. Like the day of was just incredible. And it was amazing to see what was even just possible to start building back in 3 days. But I think we were way ahead of most communities because of the resilience and the energy and the connectedness of the town, because we really came together in a way that I can't imagine any other, town coming together.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, really, all honestly, like from my experience too, it was unbelievable. Like I think the best term that I heard was hippies and rednecks working side by side.
Yeah.
That was the best term I heard there, because that's exactly how it was. And really the beautiful thing about that is that really hones in what America is supposed to be about.
Yep.
Is that we fight, we bicker, different opinions, all that stuff, which just creates diversity, which was what makes this country great, is diversity.
Right.
And but then tragedy happens, like 9/11, a flood, Hurricane Helene, like tragedy happens, and then neighbors just turn around and help each other. And
Yep.
it's about the individual, or it's about each other, but like the individual people, not these group think type ideologies and stuff like that. And it's absolutely beautiful, because it gave me such hope in our country, in our people, in everything, to just be there. Like I remember you told me how do you thank me? And I was like, just give me some tools, man. like just being a part of this is amazing. Like just that energy, just being a part of how awesome that was enough. Like we didn't want to leave.
Yeah. That's exactly how I would describe it to you. The hippie and the redneck, coming together, and there was no questions about what our thoughts are or beliefs are. We were just in this together. And not only just in this together, but in a way that defies the odds. Like, we would go and work all day, the whole community. We'd start at like 8 a.m. and then we'd be covered in mud, every one of us. And then we would go at 11 to this little town meeting where we'd all talk about what's happening that day, what's going to happen the next day. one day at a time, who was handling what. And we would go back to work, and we would do that until 5 or 6. And then we would all go back home, but we would end up, in groups of 10 at different people's houses for drinks and food. We would like collect all the food from different people's freezers before they were gone, and we would grill up things, and we would, eat together in the dark with candle lights. We had no cell reception, no phones, no power, no water. And yet we just found a way to laugh about it. We were like literally laughing, telling the stories from the day, how unbelievable it was that this happened to us, what our families must be thinking as they didn't hear from us for days. And it was really magical.
Yeah. It's really, really beautiful when you can find the beauty in a tragedy. And that's amazing. It's like the town was put to the test and answered the call. So one thing I want to get into too is, so since the flood, how much since the flood, how is the rebuilding going? How much assistance have you like received from FEMA, and what are ways that people can assist you?
Sure. So one thing that's been an ongoing confusion for a lot of people is like, what does FEMA do? So FEMA helps individuals and they help municipalities. They do not help businesses. Basically what happens is you apply as a business, but once you apply, they pretty much immediately deny you, and they forward you to SBA. So what you can apply for as a business, from the federal government is through SBA, which is basically a disaster relief loan. It is a deferred interest loan, usually for a year, and then a low interest loan after that. So you do have to take on debt as a business in order to do it. So although I have applied and I may need to do it, it hasn't been offered yet. Probably because they ran out of funding pretty much immediately, and they couldn't get a special meeting of Congress to be able to do it. It got pushed till after the election, which was political. And so now we're just waiting for Congress to come back into session to be able to approve funding the SBA account. So we'll see kind of where that goes. Otherwise, there are a few grants or other what they call like bridge loans for businesses. I've applied for all of them and gotten none, which is amazing to me, because some of the grants, they'll just send me a, kind of blanket denial. And I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, I must be in like the reddest zone that's like eligible for this grant. Like, how could I possibly be denied it, but they don't really tell you why or anything. So there's a couple that I'm still outstanding. A lot of it too it's really technical. They ask for a lot of documentation that that can be lost in the flood or is difficult to get because you didn't expect it. Like if you had requested a what is it called? An extension on your taxes. You weren't thinking like, oh, I need to have these taxes done in order to apply for this disaster relief loan, so then you're like rushing, trying to like do these things. So it gets complicated to get those. I've honestly been running on what little donations I've been able to collect myself personally. And mostly the majority of it, like volunteering of skilled labor. Because without that, I would have been dead in the water. I've had some amazing stories, like, because, people like yourself obviously coming with your skilled labor and helping us was amazing. In addition to that, like one story is there's guy, a retired contractor. He's 75 and he lives in Utah. And he was sitting there listening to, I think he said Glenn Beck about the situation. He was like, "Oh, I should like donate to these funds." And he was like, he said he heard the still small voice say to him, "No, you have the skills. You need to be there." So he went out and he bought a truck and a new camper, and he got donations from his church and drove out here and just ended up in town. And he parked his camper and said, "I'm going to stay here until you're done, even if it's a year." And he's been my contractor, It like literally makes me like tear up, like telling the story, because it's just so incredible. I don't even know like if I would do that. I think I would now, but like, I don't even know that I would have done that, prior. And then another retired contractor that lives in town has completely donated his time to helping me rebuild. And I couldn't even, my dad was a contractor for 30 years and he could build all these things, but he's in a wheelchair and he every day is just like dying that he can't be here to help. And so I know like a little bit of finishing work or, stuff like that, but like to basically build a hotel and restaurant, which is what we're doing in essence, because we're starting from the foundation up. I didn't even know where to start, So that skilled labor coming in and helping is everything. And that's what I ask for mostly. It's like financial donations are king for sure, because it helps me buy the materials, like the specific materials I need. We also started like a website that should be up soon where we can request specific materials and people can either donate to buy them or they can send those materials.
Oh, what's the website? Because we're going to put it across here and everything and let everybody know.
Yeah, so it's going to be located at rebuildhotsprings.org. Once it's up, right now you can financially donate there. I'll also give you my GoFundMe personally for the hotel if somebody wants to donate specific to us. I hate asking for help, but I've gotten used to it at this point because I have to.
That's a big thing though, especially like with this podcast and what we talk about with entrepreneurship. One huge thing is knowing when to ask for help, because none of us got anywhere that we are without someone helping.
Totally.
Right? All of us, the business owners, everything, somebody helped us get there. It's why we help out others and we keep it going around. But knowing when to ask for help. And let me tell you something, David, you're in a place where it's appropriate to ask for help. And I've seen it with my own eyes. It's like I said, we didn't want to leave. If we didn't have to, like we had to come back because I had clients that I had to take care of. But like we planned to be there for like 2 days. We ended up staying there for like 5, and it was just so hard to leave. But you are in a place where it's appropriate to ask for help, and that's something I hope that we can do here with this podcast is get you some more of the help that you need, some more skilled laborers, and some more donations. So, but yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I've said before, like that, as a business owner, like you try and create a contingency plan for, worst case scenarios. I couldn't even imagine coming up with like, there is no contingency plan for what occurred, it's because it's so big. The contingency plan is basically the cost of starting the business to begin with, and it's just impossible. So that's why I've had to tell myself like it's necessary to ask for help at this point. You didn't make a mistake. There's no way to like know that like 1,000-year flood is gonna occur. So I appreciate that, and I will definitely do my best to steward the donations in a way that's positive and appropriate.
Yeah. So definitely, one more time, the website and the GoFundMe.
Sure. So GoFundMe is probably some weird number, right? So, but if you go to Spring Creek Hotel at Instagram or Spring Creek Hotel on TikTok, you can get to the link to my GoFundMe, and I'll give it so maybe you guys can place it with the post.
Perfect.
And then hotspringsrecovery.org. You can donate to the town in general. And you can even put stipulations, whether you want it for people or for businesses or for building materials. And we've created a new nonprofit in town to manage those funds and accept grant requests and do what we can to spread that out.
That's perfect. So my next question now, David, how are you doing since we were last there, since we saw you last? How's everything going for you personally?
Yeah. I mean, I have my days. Like, there's some days where I'm like, we're doing this. This space is going to get there. No problem. Like, I can see this all happening. And it's exciting too, to go. I can do all the things that I couldn't do before to the hotel, and the restaurant, because I had to just keep moving forward with the plan. And then I have my days where I walk around for a minute. I had this even yesterday, Saturday. It's slower now. We get kind of volunteers usually on like Mondays and Tuesdays. On Saturdays and Sundays, it's a little slower. So I'll be walking around, working on things, tossing rocks into the building because we can't get them any other way for the new foundation. And you're going like, how is this going to ever get finished? It just seems so huge. And once again, like, I'll walk out, I'll see Tom, and I'll be like, Tom, today's one of those days where I'm walking around, I don't know how this can finish. And he's like, it's going to get done, and it's good to have people that know what a major construction site looks like, and that it's on its path, So overall, good, positive, and excited for the future. And that's the story.
Yeah. So I have a saying that the worst moments in our lives, if you think back and to like all the worst things that could like possibly happen to you, right, that have happened, I always find that they are grounds for some of the best times in your entire life. Like they're like that, hitting that zero, that spot where you're faced with a decision. We talk about this decision a lot here on this podcast, where you're faced with that decision of give up or keep going. And so it's like you have the worst thing happen to you, and then it creates this energy in these grounds. And then in 4 or 5 years, you realize that worst thing is what led you to now what's the best thing, better than anything you could have ever imagined. So I think that I think that with your resilience and how much you're pushing through, and let me just say to the audience, this man has the biggest heart on the planet. You give this man a hug, you just feel so much love. Like you just emanate love, man. So I want you to know that. Like I could feel that every time I'm around you. You emanate love and caring, and you're so strong. And it's gonna get there, and it's gonna be better than it was before. That's the thing that I will call it right now. It's gonna be better than it ever was before. And being able to rebuild this from the ground up, you're going to know more about these buildings. They're going to be stronger. They're going to be better. I mean, now everybody's pretty much ready for anything to happen. I say rebuild stuff, right? So it's all of this happened for a reason, and it seems tough to understand the reason right now, but I promise you it's going to be for the good. Because also knowing the community, knowing the people around you as well, like Hot Springs is going to be kicking ass.
Yeah. And I'd like to leave that with that too. Like Hot Springs 2025, like come see us, come visit, because one of our fears is that once we get everything back up and running, people will be scared to come. So come visit.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to tell your story and speak with us. And thank you again for letting me help. Like that was awesome. But all right, so we're gonna wrap it up here now. But I really, really appreciate your time, David.
Of course. Thank you for having me. So many cool stories that I couldn't even tell in that amount of time. I mean, gravel, like we couldn't get gravel for the life of us because the DOT and the railroads took all the gravel. And in order to build a footer, I had to have like 40 yards of gravel. But somehow like somebody would be like, I'm going to drive a pickup truck from 2 hours away with one load. And then I'd get another load from this place. And then this guy was like, we'll get you gravel here. I mean, and like somehow we managed to get enough gravel. Like it's the weirdest, just so many interesting little stories. And I need to start like recording them or writing them down.
Yeah.
I do hope this is the last of the whammies. I had a crazy year. Like in January of 24, I broke my arm. And then in, I think it was March or April, my dog of 14-year passed away. And then this happened. It's just been like a crazy year. So maybe like you say, like the worst of times creates the best of times. And 2025 is going to be the kicker.
Yeah. Like, especially if things come in threes. You got 3 big things this year. I think you're going to be all right.
Yeah,
usually there isn't a 4th one, you know. So it usually comes in threes.
5 good things, you know. Like, say 5 good things for every 3 bad things you have to say, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's good. It's good. It's a good ratio.